What's up, guys? This is Riley here to make my second video of kind of a passion project that I've started just to talk about leadership or things that pertain to leadership and coaching and beyond things, hopefully things beyond coaching that people can apply to really any sort of career that they're leading people, that they're in a leadership role. So I just want to say thank you so much for the positive feedback and the response that I got from the first video. This has really been a passion project that I've always wanted to start, always wanted to do. And so I'm overwhelmed by it, and it was pretty awesome. I had over 100 people or over 100 views for the first video. I would have never imagined that people would want to look at it. So it's pretty awesome. So just thank you guys so much. Again, I love talking about this kind of stuff. So please reach out to me on Twitter at CoachHill_24, or leave a comment on these videos if you want to kind of interact. I know I had one comment on the last video with a great question, and so just kind of continuing to want to do that. But I'm going to kind of hop in and kind of recap the first video, what we talked about, and then kind of hop into the second topic that I really wanted to talk about. I haven't had a chance to think about it, but just to kind of recap, the first video we talked about authentic relationships and building authentic relationships with those around you, those on your team, those you either lead or you lead with. And you do that through small building or breaking moments. And those moments are small interactions that come, and you have an opportunity to either be sarcastic and rip down, or you have a chance to build. And I think those things are really, really important because it's kind of the foundation of what you're trying to do. It's kind of the foundation of how you lead, and it's kind of the foundation of the tempo and the temperature that you set within your teams, within your culture. I know that's a big buzzword of culture is those building or breaking moments. You can have all the things that you want to say in the world. You could have 100 slogans, but if you're not building through those slogans, if you're not building in those moments, if you're not continuing to ask yourself to be your best in a way of building up those around you, then the slogans are just empty things. But so though I do think that as you kind of look through where you're at and where you want to be or go with leading your team or leading yourself, or where you want to go kind of in your career and down the road, I do think that you taking those small moments to build or break and making sure that you're accountable to yourself in those moments is really important. It's really hard though. I think it's something that this past week is after I did the video, something that I try to pay attention to as I interacted with the people around me, and I know that I didn't always take those moments. Either I let the moment pass and I didn't say anything, and I think that was one of the things too that I wanted to kind of follow up on is those. It's not just a one or the other. A lot of times we pass those moments up to build, or even if it's a teardown moment, to say nothing. And I think that is probably a bigger flaw or a bigger miss than even maybe a breaking moment is we let so many of those, excuse me, we let so many of those opportunities just pass. We don't take any action in those moments. And I think that's something, that can really hurt a lot of us because, something left unsaid can also be a negative. That I think about that as the gray space. I used to think about that as a wandering space. So the people around you in moments that are missed and there's no action being done, there's not an either or, good or bad, there's a no action. It actually is a negative action, because if you think about it, it leaves room for interpretation. It leaves room for gray area. There's always a wandering spot. And so it's one of those moments. I could take it back to coaching. It's one of those moments where your kids start to wonder, like, man, does Coach Hill even like me? He didn't say anything to me. I don't think he likes me. You know what? He's probably thinking about this thing he probably heard, through the grapevine, and like all of a sudden there's this wandering tactic that happens, and I know for me it was one of the things that I always like to do. When I was able to coach college football, and you're able to really sit down and have one-on-one meetings, and I learned that it's a lot harder at the high school level to have those one-on-one meetings, and why those interactions become so important, because you don't get those one-on-one meetings. When I was a college coach, I was able to sit guys in. I would take time after training camp and then in the middle of the season, at the end of the season, to try to have as many one-on-one meetings as I could, because I wanted to eliminate all gray space. I wanted to make sure that the kids knew exactly where I stood on A, their performance, B, they could tell who I was. They knew that I liked them. They knew that I would talk to them, and that my space was a safe space for them. And this year, coaching high school football for the first time, not being in the building all the time, is those one-on-one meetings that they didn't happen. So when I reflect on the season and I reflect on my time in the building, like there were a lot of moments that I passed up that again are counted as negative moments in with the kids because of that, because there's all of a sudden there becomes this wandering space. Because like, let's say I pass up one moment and then the next moment I lead with something negative. Well, that's back-to-back negatives, because I just confirmed probably what the things that he's wondering and the things that he's thinking, instead of counteracting those with a positive thought to get him in a space where like he's like, oh, okay, coach Ellie likes me. All right, cool. We're cool. All right, we're cool. So that I wanted to follow up with that, because it's something that I've been thinking about, is making sure that we do take action in those moments, and it's really easy to bypass them. Super easy to bypass them. Like, it's much easier to bypass them than to say something positive or say something negative. So it's just food for thought, something to think about, something that I want to continue to be aware of for myself as I go forward. Is like, man, am I just passing these moments by? Am I really just passing these moments by? But that kind of leads me into the topic that I wanted to kind of talk about today, which is it's an off season for football coaches. It's a sport that I know and I coach. It's also end of the year evaluation time. I know for a lot of corporations, they start to get in. They're starting to write end of the year reviews. I know my wife's corporation gets into. She starts meeting with the people on her team in March, and so it's a really busy time for a lot of people. And the off season is great. It's a time to continue to learn. It's a time to continue to expand. But I also think it's a time to make sure that your foundation is set. As we were talking as an offensive staff, it's like, okay, what are things that we need to change? And then what are things that we need to build on? And I think what's great about one of the great things about football is you can really look at data. You can really look at yards, average yards gained, things like that, to really kind of set that tempo. But I think one of the things that is really important in the off season, and something that I didn't do a really good job of for a long time. It took me to get to a really bad kind of personal spot. Is the off season is also an evaluation of and the mirror time for ourselves. And I think ourselves as leaders, one of the things that we don't do a good job of is we don't do a good job of introspection. And we are always looking outward, and our mirrors for ourselves are really quick. Like that time is really, really quick. That reflection time is really quick. I know, I'm a man of faith, and to say that my faith has been rock solid, to say that it's always been something that I've always leaned on, like it isn't always true. And sometimes in those quiet moments, in those moments where I try to take some time for prayer, or I try to take some time for personal reflection, I know for a long time, those moments were filled up with things of how I could be doing more. Can you give me the energy to? Can you help me see somebody else more? Instead of taking that time, and I think it's really important, is to take that time of reflection and put that true mirror in front of my face. Like, where am I at? Because we can't pour from an empty cup, right? Like, our cups as leaders have to be filled. Our cups as people who interact have to be filled, because if it's not, then we could have a really, really hard time continuing to lead from a place of genuine leadership. Instead, a lot of times it's mustered up, or it's fake, or it's just not authentic. It's not authentically who we are. We start to lead from places that aren't us. And so I think, one of the things that's really important as you go into either an end of the year review or any sort of off season to an evaluation season, is to take that time for ourselves. And to really, for coaches, put scheme aside, put drills aside, and really start to reflect on, like, man, where am I at? What am I lacking? During the season, the season is a grind. Like, where did I miss? Where was I lacking? Where did I not fill myself up enough? And because of that, the stuff around me wasn't as good as it could have been. And I think that kind of stuff is really, really important. My wife and I are in Minnesota this week visiting some family and going to visit some friends. And we had some time on the drive to kind of sit and reflect on that kind of stuff. And, I know for her in a corporate setting, like you are driven by deadlines. You are driven by getting to the next thing. And that's a little bit different than I think in the sports world. It's kind of this because in the corporate world, it's continuous, right? Like deadlines never stop. There is no off season where you stop to evaluate. And so finding that time is like you almost have to break it into like a quarters, like I know that corporations do quarterly reviews and things like that. And so it's a little bit different in that setting compared to it is when it's in sports. And I think in sports, we get a really nice spot in an off season to really kind of reflect on ourselves beyond just the scheme, beyond just what we need to do in the weight room, but like where we're at, really pulse checking ourselves to make sure that we are leading from a place of authenticness. I don't even know if that's a word, but leading from our true selves. And to do that, we have to be full. And for some people, that's making sure that they're really diving into their faith. For some people, that's making sure they're taking time for themselves. They need a chance to kick their feet up, to stop thinking about scheme for a second, to not necessarily spend 25 minutes watching videos on schemes and all this stuff, but taking 25 minutes to play the guitar, learn something new, or just read a book, and making sure we're taking time for that. Because a lot of times we will cut that stuff out to do more. And I know in a sports setting, from a leadership spot, like there is a expectation that we work harder than anything and anybody that we can imagine. And that, like if we're working where we think we're working right here, we need to be at the next spot. Like we have to get to that next spot. So we'll sleep less. We'll cut out things that we need to cut out. I'll stop working out. I won't eat well. I'll make sure I don't cook. And I'll just eat something real quick because I have another recruiting call to make. I have to make sure I get another weight room time in. I have to make sure I do something else. I have to make sure I talk to this other coach about schemer. Instead of really stopping and making sure that like, hey, like what do I as a person really need? Like what do I really, really need to get to do to make sure that I start to fill my cup up? And I know from a teacher perspective, that's got to be so important too, like just being able to take time away from your subject matter or take time away from thinking about IEPs and paperwork and all this kind of stuff, to take time to settle yourself down, to really think about, what you need, because that kind of stuff is so important. And there's always time for growth. There's always time to make sure that we're personally growing and getting what we need and getting the knowledge that we need to be our best. There's always time for that. And I think what we start to do when we get into these positions of leadership, so for so long, I think a lot of us work to get to these positions, whether it's being a position coach, being a graduate assistant, starting out as a freshman coach. They're like, we grind, we gain knowledge. We're always trying to do a little bit more. And then we get in these positions where we get to where we want to go. And instead of really starting to turn that focus from outward stuff back and turning some of that focus back inward, now that we have more responsibility on our shoulders, now that we lead more, now that more people are asking more of us and they're taking more, to make sure that we can replenish ourselves. Because I do think as leaders, we forget, we really forget how much is being taken and asked and pride from us each day. And it's not to anybody's fault that happens. It's just the natural spot that we get into. And so I really think as for sport coaches, and like I say, I know, basketball is still in the midst of their season. Baseball's kind of in that build-up time. There's this idea that, we need to learn more. We need to get more. We need to do more. Instead of just taking time and saying, how about, all right, today I'm just, what I'm going to do. Today is a mental health day. I know that's the kind of a catchphrase term, I need to take a mental health day, but it's so important. It's so important to make sure that you're not just grinding yourself silly, and you're not just always focusing on everything else, that you take time, because if we don't, we eventually get to empty. And sometimes we don't know when we get to empty because we're so used to operating out of empty, that operating out of empty feels normal. But it's not normal, and it's not okay. And we shouldn't just accept that operating out of empty is what we're supposed to do, because it's not truth. It's not truth at all to operate out of empty. We're not supposed to operate out of empty. We're not supposed to neglect friendships. We're not supposed to neglect eating right. We're not supposed to neglect making sure we're working out, or taking some sort of whether it's just doing some yoga, or having some faith time to sit down and either hop into the Bible, or listen to a podcast, but not necessarily a podcast that's asking you to pay attention and learn more, but the podcast is actually kind of pouring into you as a person. And so often when we get in this leadership position, we stop looking for things that can help fill us up, and we just start looking outward of things to pour into. What needs a little bit more of me? What can I do a little bit more of to up something, right? And I think when we start to get in these spots where we stop asking ourselves, like, is this filling me up? Is this something that I get filled up from, that brings joy to me? It can become a negative, even if it's something that we love, right? And so, like, to give you an example, being in the weight room is something that most coaches love to do. It's something that most coaches know has to happen. But there comes a point where you can overdo that, because even though you love it and it's something that you really enjoy, it can start to be a negative if it's taking too much from you. If it's asking too much of you, even though it's something you enjoy, it's still taking, you're still on when you're in there, right? You don't go into the weight room and just turn it off, right? Like, this is not possible. It's not possible to do that. You don't walk into a meeting with another coach to talk about scheme and turn it off. And I think one of those things is sometimes we take that stuff and we try to justify that, well, because I'm doing this, I really enjoy it. Like, I really enjoy meeting with other coaches. I really enjoy talking about scheme with other guys. I really enjoy being in the weight room. That because we enjoy it, it's something that we like to do, that we mistake it for something that truly fills us up, because it's not. It's actually taking. And if we're not doing a good job of taking other moments to fill our cup up and do things that we enjoy, to take time to breathe, then all of a sudden we find ourselves on empty, making excuses to give more and do more and just pour out more to things that we like, but they're not actually life-giving to us. They're life-taking because of what's being asked from us in those situations. And so, as we kind of transition into, the start of this year, and as we get into more of what's being asked from us, I think it's really important for coaches, for people in leadership, for teachers, to take a step back and make sure that they're doing things that are life-giving to them, that are pouring into them so that they can pour out. We're taking moments that we can turn it off. We're taking moments that we can check out. We're taking moments of things that are small, and we're giving ourselves permission. And that's, like, when I say that, like, that's super important too. We give ourselves permission to do it. Not do it out of obligation because you're like, geez, I know I need to do this. But, like, saying, like, you know what? I'm allowed to do this. I'm allowed to take 1 hour and do whatever it is I enjoy. I'm allowed to take 1 hour and cut the grass. And in that 1 hour, I can think about whatever I want to. I can think about football. I can think about sports. I can think about whatever I need to get done. But I'm not going to stop doing that one thing that I really want to do, that I really enjoy doing. And so I think in the midst of the acts of doing, in the midst of asking more for ourselves, I think one of the things we need to do is, I'm a list person, is I think in our to-do list, or things that we need to accomplish, or our goal list, we need to also have a small thing in there that says, what do I want? What do I need to do for myself? I need to take 15 minutes to breathe, man. That's what I need to do. Or I need to take 25 minutes and I need to get a workout in. I am a better person when I get a workout in. I just am. I need to release some of that anxious energy that I have. I need to release, I need to just move my body. But if I don't take that time, I can make every excuse in the world to find time to do other things. And if I don't take that time for me to make sure that I do it, I'm somebody's going to get less of me because of it. And there are just to think about it and just remind yourself, like, there's plenty of time in the day. You do not have to make extra time to get this stuff done. You just have to make time for it. You don't have to get up at 5 and go to bed at midnight to get in something that's life-giving to you. The research is out there. We all know we need to sleep, right? Like, that's that in line. Everybody needs to get their sleep. And so we shouldn't take away from things that's important to fit time in for things that we need. And so, like, I guess I'm just here to encourage you to give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to do things that are life-giving to you. Stop asking more of yourself without pouring into yourself, without having an actual conversation with somebody about how you're doing. Finding those authentic relationships that we have, and telling somebody who you have an authentic relationship, like, hey, I'm struggling. I'm on empty right now, and I can't figure out why. I can't figure out why, because I am working out. But something's being taken from me that even when I fill my cup up, it's automatically being drained. So taking those authentic relationships and making sure that we are filling our cups up for doing things that we need to do for ourselves, and also talking to those around us about it. And so kind of the last thing that I wanted to finish up with about this is the fact that making sure that we're talking to people, making sure that we're telling people how we're doing. And sometimes and for me, like, I'm the type of person that I'll wait for somebody to ask how I'm doing. And I could wait 3 to 4 to 5 years, right? Then somebody will ask me about, oh man, I'm good. I'm good. Solid. Really doing well. Instead of being true to what I need and saying, you know what? I'm kind of struggling, man. Like, I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z. And, I don't know what to do about it. And so as you take time to evaluate, as you take time to learn, as you take time to, like, okay, what's next? What am I trying to learn? What do I want to get better at? Make sure we turn that mirror on ourselves and we have true introspection about where we're at and how we're doing. And when we get to a spot where you're like, man, I don't know if I'm doing great. I don't know if I'm really pouring from a full cup. I think I'm operating on E, and I think I've been operating on E for a really long time. Then make sure you start to find those people that you have those authentic relationships with, that's in your circle, and you start to tell them, like, I'm operating on E. And I think I just need to talk through why I'm operating on E. I don't need any answers. I don't really know if I need you to fix it. I think I just need you to listen, and I just got to talk about it. And when we start to do that stuff as coaches, I say coaches, but as leaders, as we start to learn to lead ourselves by taking time to have a mirror perspective, taking time to evaluate it, taking time to do the things that we need to do to make sure that we fill our cup up. And then also figure out, like, if we're on E and we can't figure out why, and taking that time to figure it out and then talking about it, we will become better leaders. We will teach the people that we are leading how to do the same thing. And I think that's it's such a difficult skill, and it's such a learned skill. So make sure that as you take time to grow, as you take time to learn everything you can about your subject, your whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's teaching, whether it's marketing, it doesn't matter. As you take time to learn those things, also take time to do things for yourself, to take time to evaluate where you're at, to take time to understand where you are at, and then figure out where you need to go to be your best. Because when you're at your best, we're giving our best. And we truly impact the people around us when we are giving our best. And the people around us know that they're getting our best, and they can feel it, and they thrive off of it, and we help change directions of things that we want to do. So make sure you're taking time for yourself. Make sure you're taking reflection time for yourself. Make sure you're doing the things that you need to do to be at your best, so that then it allows you to have the people around you and the people that you're leading be at their best. Well, guys, thanks again for listening. This is the end of the second video. Really excited to continue to do this. Please leave a comment, reach out if you got any questions or feedback or comments. I love this, and thanks again. Thanks so much for your time.